All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts and adjacent combat sports as my mood dictates. I'm Robert Winfree, and I am your host. First up, per usual, thank y'all very, very much. I don't have the biggest show in the world, but I appreciate the heck out of all of you who do listen. Thank you. It means a lot to me. I know there's a lot of places you can go for MMA related content, and the fact that you choose mine as supplemental to your overall experience is uh, humbling and motivating and occasionally baffling. Um, so, first of all, just thank you for listening. If it's not too much trouble, interact with the product a little bit. Like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review, whatever's applicable to your podcast platform of choice. That all feeds the unknowable eldritch monstrosity that is the various algorithms tracking that kind of thing. So thank you all very much for that. Anything you can do is always appreciated. And if you've done any and all of that, share. Let people know. That's, again, anything you guys can do. And honestly, the fact that you just listen at all is really nice. So thank you. All right, on the agenda this evening. Last night, as I record this at least, UFC on ESPN plus 94. Boy, that was a very, very apex card, wasn't it? We'll go over all the results. I'm sure the primary reason you're here, we are previewing also UFC 298, the first pay-per-view of, there's pay-per-view 2024? I'm pretty sure. Just want to double check that real fast. Yeah, there was none in January. So yeah, first pay-per-view of 2024. Headlined by maybe the best fight you can make in all of the sport right now. Other people hold that opinion. I would agree with it, honestly. So we will be previewing that. And then, pretty quiet news week. The Super Bowl kind of sucks up most of the oxygen, usually. And it did for this one. But, again, we'll see if there's anything worth talking about. I've got a couple, again, I have a few things. You can see them in the timestamps and notes below, per usual. I think that's it as far as the preamble here goes. So, with that said, let's get into the card, shall we? Sorry, I've been up for a while today. Um, one of my aunts throws a Super Bowl party every year, and I was up early starting some food for that, and it was worth it. But if I sound a little out of sorts, I'm just a little sleep deprived. Not a lot, just a little bit. I've been much more sleep deprived than this. So, UFC on ESPN plus 94. You know what? Your boy here had a pretty good card, picks wise. I'm not going to break my arm patting myself on the back here, but all told, I went 10-3 with one no contest. I don't expect that to happen very often. Double digits is probably it's probably going to be a rarity. But one way or another, it turns out I had a pretty decent read on this card, so I'll take it. What did anything I wanted to say about that? Yeah, the no contest was going my way, but, if you can't continue after being kicked in the groin for the second time in a round, I am certainly not here to cast aspersions on you. Yeah, so statistically speaking, my best event this year was this one. Brings me to 32-16 on the year. Two no contests thus far. I'm okay with that. I'm pretty okay with that. I think the only one of these that I have to talk about, I forgot to note my pick in the Fernie Garcia and Hader Emil fight. I'm 90% sure I picked Emil, but I couldn't quite find it I noticed that when I was writing up my blurbs. So I kind of scanned quickly through the audio of the podcast last week. Couldn't find I couldn't find it. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I listened to other stuff when I'm writing those up. So at that moment, when I write those up like Friday night after the weigh-ins. So picked a meal. If I just couldn't find it last week, and you're sitting here screaming at me that I'm a fraud, and that should be the other way around, timestamp it, tweet me, write a comment. I'm not. I'm not here to. I mean, again, all I've got is my word on this. So if I'm wrong and I'm misremembering, and again, if I just couldn't find it, whatever. I will happily adjust my tally. This is not an ego thing for me. This is a curiosity thing. And then I kept my Balaji Oki pick, even though he got a short notice replacement in the form of Tim Kwamba after Hadzovic had issues. Again, I double check all of my picks when I write up my blurbs, see if anything changed over the week and whatnot, and what might need to be adjusted. The fact that he still won, split decision, but again, this is not an ego thing for me. If you're gonna I'm not. Of all the cards I might try to fudge on, this would not be one of them. This was kind of a nothing card. But as far as the predictions go, I had a good one. I'm again not gonna break my arm patting myself on the back, but I'll take that on a 14 fight card. I'll take 10-3 with one fight that ended via groin kick. All right, main event. Let's get into the individual fights and no more of me, talking up the stats and how I arrived at some of those things. Main event, Jack Hermansson defeats Joe Pyfer via unanimous decision, 48-47 across the boards. Live, I was 49-46 Hermansson. I don't think, watching it live, I didn't think Pyfer landed enough of his power punches in the second round. Everybody seems to disagree with me. Happy to say I missed that one. If I just missed it, my bad. Scoring fights live while doing coverage is not ideal. Usual disclaimers there. And I think I said last week, if this was 3 rounds, I'd pick Pyfer. If this was 3 rounds, he would have won. But rounds 4 and 5 are a different beast, man. And Pyfer slowed. He couldn't really corral Hermansson, despite Hermansson's footwork patterns. I don't want to say they're not great because that does him such a disservice. They're more, you can get reads on them easier than Pyfer did, and other people have. So something to note if you're going to fight Joe Pyfer in the future. Footwork can trouble him a little bit. Calf kicks were kind of a big deal, and Hermansson got the better of those. Again, just Pyfer slowed down the longer this went. Calf kicks, body work, just sort of general fatigue, because human beings are not meant to fight for 25 minutes. It's very much not a natural occurrence. And the first time you have that happen, it's a little bit of a shock to the system. Even if you've worked through it, plenty of guys who have won their first 5-round fight, even if it goes all the way, they'll admit to, that, trained hard for it, but it's still just a little bit different when it's live versus training. So Hermansson stayed alive. He'd been out of action for a little over a year. The joke that kind of came out after this was, boy, how good is Roman Dolidze? Because Dolidze lost the first round of their fight pretty cleanly before catching him in that odd position. He went for a leg entanglement, switched to a calf crusher from behind, or a calf slicer rather. Sorry, crusher is what professional wrestling refers to it as. And he got like the back holding the calf slicer, and it kind of just pinned Hermansson. He couldn't really get free, and Dolidze just teed off on him. And Dolidze, of course, didn't have a whole lot in his last fight. Man, middleweight's not in the best place right now. Can we say that out loud yet? Other people have been. I'm gonna just add my voice to that. I'm not saying it's a crap division. I don't think that's fair to it. I am saying it kind of needs a rebuilding phase. We're starting to see guys who've been around for a while lingering in ways that a healthy division doesn't necessarily support most of the time. Um, Again, could be wrong, and there's some talented fighters in the division, but at the moment, I don't think it's trending in the right direction. So, just some food for thought there. Middleweight's a weird division. 'Cause for a long time, it was pretty shallow with some big, with some big sharks in it. A few years back, it got decently deep, and then kind of went sideways again. It is trending down at the moment. Again, just some new talent will come along, and these things are cyclical. It's rare that you get a division that is consistently very, very healthy at the top end. You got to be something deep like lightweight or bantamweight to kind of pull that off. And dude, featherweight's been good for. Again, featherweight's had minor fluctuations, but featherweight's been pretty solid for a long time. Anyway, good win for Hermanson. Pfeiffer, a learning experience. And that first 5-round fight can be tough, man. And Pfeiffer mentioned, losing the calf kick battle hurt, and seems he wasn't fully prepared for the amount of media he was going to have to do. Because he kind of complained about that, which is he did that thing where, like, I'm not making excuses, I'm kind of explaining what happened. I'll take him at his word that he's not making excuses, he's just giving explanations, because those are not the same thing. And it's very true that the first time you get kind of that big spate of media obligations from a UFC event, it's different. It can throw your rhythm off. There's still a bunch of stuff that he should have already had dialed in, but in fairness to him, that will mess with you. So, again, for what it's worth. The UFC still seems to like Pfeiffer. They were pushing him a little too far here, hence part of my pick. He's not looked bad in the UFC until rounds 4 and 5 here, which he's not the only guy who's looked rough in their first 5-round fight that goes out of the third round. I imagine he'll do some rebuilding, but fighting a veteran like Hermanson he's got less than 10 fights, doesn't he? Or right around that. He's got 15. Okay, so 12 and 2 coming into this was, in hindsight, certainly a bridge too far, and I don't think it was entirely foreseeable beforehand that it could very well be a bridge too far. But yeah, middleweight kind of continues treading water. Not much you can do about it. Let's see. Co-main event. Oof. Dan Ige, man, he ended Andre Fili. Fili doing a lot of first round, man. 243 of the first, knocked him out. Fili doing the thing, a lot of stance switches like he normally does. His problem came when he was entering orthodox and just got a little lazy with his lead hand. He kind of, flicked out a bit of a jab. Not enough oomph behind it to stop Ige's forward motion, so Ige kind of eats this jab. But Fili isn't down behind his shoulder while he's throwing it, and he's not out of range to get away from the right hand. Ige just floors him with one more for good measure. Really brutal knockout. Good stuff from Dan Ige. He kind of needed a statement win here. Then we had a catchweight fight. Ihor Potieria missed weight. And then scored a unanimous decision over Robert Brychek. This fight kind of sucked. Potieria seems like one of those guys whose game only works against people he vastly outskills or who are shot. Like very over-the-hill fighters. Still have yet to be genuinely impressed with anything he's done. And Brychek, he had moments, but he then couldn't deal reliably with which is part of the reason I think Potieria is down at middleweight. He was public about like, yeah, I want to be the bigger guy. I'm not good enough to fight guys bigger than me, so now I have to be bigger. Which is the fundamental concession a lot of guys are making when they drop down to try and be weight bullies. And I'm saying that in a negative sense here. I really shouldn't. Like I said, plenty of guys do this. And Potieria's frame might be a little bit better suited for middleweight. If you can get within a pound and a half on short notice, he's probably going to have no problem making weight next time, but we'll keep an eye on it and see if he does. Again, not a good fight. Middleweights, Gregory Rodriguez. Apparently he does prefer Rodriguez instead of the Brazilian Rodriguez. So, Gregory Rodriguez, old RoboCop. He TKOs Brad Tavares 55 seconds of the third round. Tavares, I appreciate that commentary has a job to do. I really do. But listening to Daniel Cormier and Dominic Cruz talk about how Brad Tavares is there for the whole fight, which is which is true. He's got good cardio. He's pretty durable. And you're in danger the whole time because even if you've beat him up for a couple of rounds, he'll still swing and might take your head off in the last one. Again, I appreciate that they're trying to sell this. For the record, Brad Tavares has I think he surpassed Michael Bisping for most bouts in middleweight history here, so credit to him. Been around for a long time. But he has the second most decision wins in UFC history, only behind Neil Magny. He has the most fights that have gone the distance in divisional history. And, hang on. How many, in his entire UFC career, he knocked out Phil Baroni in his second UFC fight in 2011. Baroni was way over the hill. His only other win is over Krzysztof Jotko in 2018. So, dear commentary, again, I appreciate that you have to sell this. I really do. But we're not stupid. Especially if you're watching this kind of card, you know who Brad Tavares is. You know that this guy, again, 2 finishes in a UFC, 2 finish wins. He's been finished a few times. In a UFC career that is 14 years long, almost. And, he's got how many fights? 29? Came into the UFC at 5, so he's 5-0, then his 6th fight ever was in the UFC. So, 24, give or take. Yes, we would have, so like 24 or 25, so I'm not going to count. UFC fights. 2 finish wins. Guys, again, I appreciate that commentary is a difficult gig. I appreciate that you're trying to sell it. Take that to another sucker, I beg of you. That is ridiculous. That is just ridiculous. But Rodriguez did what he usually does. Pretty good forward pressure. They both traded punches. Rodriguez just hit harder, got some takedowns, and kind of wore on him a little bit. Third round, just starts clubbing. Tavares gets him against the fence and is able to unload enough to get the stoppage. Pretty solid win for old RoboCop there. Lightweight, Michael Johnson defeated Darius Flowers via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. kind of just a veteran performance out of Michael Johnson. Worked the body a little bit, stayed mostly out of trouble. Waning seconds of the third round, maybe. Um, but other than that, again, landed some pretty good punches, mixed in some takedowns, just generally better. So he got a win. Kicking off the main card, Adolfo Vieira defeated Armin Petrosyan via arm triangle choke, 4:48 of the first. Um, some good takedowns from Vieira. He had to hit some mat returns, like chain a few of them together, because Petrosyan wall walked the first couple of times he got down. Then Vieira switches from back with a back body lock, comes around, elevated double, gets Petrosyan down, and is able to get control enough of his legs to prevent the wall walk. Hits, a beautiful pass out of half guard into full mount. Just floating like butter. Oh, gorgeous, gorgeous pass from Vieira. Passes to full mount, gets the arm triangle. Um, yeah, solid performance from Vieira. Then on your prelims, there were a lot of them. Carlos Prates defeated Trevin Giles via knockout, hit him with a laser left hand, 4:03 of the second. Um, Giles was giving Prates some problems. Be very clear about that. But Prates started landing towards the end of the first round and then a little bit more in the second. Started landing, he was fighting southpaw, a stepping left knee to the body. And anytime they would kind of clash together, he'd throw that, and Giles didn't like it. Giles still landed plenty of good punches. Again, Giles he was winning, my estimation. I thought he won the first round. I thought he was doing well in the second. Then Prates gets a little bit of a read, hits him with that knee one too many times, and Giles like, fine, I've had enough of this. Fakes the knee, gets the reaction, left hand right down the center, and just sleeps Giles. Prates has a bit of a reputation as being kind of an action fighter from his regional scene. Nice to see him bring that to the UFC. Some guys, they develop that reputation, and then between the step up in competition and a few other things, that it slides away. Like, it's a little bit different. But Prates brought it here, so good win for him. Lightweights, Balaji Oki defeated Tim Kwamba via split decision, 29-28. I scored it for Oki. I don't get 2-1 for Kwamba, to be perfectly honest. I think maybe the third he might have won. Again, at least from what I saw. I'm not going to bother looking at the official scorecards. Pretty good jab from Oki. Kwamba, he struggled with that, but he got a few takedowns, and Oki's get-ups did not look especially scintillating. He's young enough. He's got time to develop. Kwamba normally fights at featherweight. Took this on short notice. Curious to see what he might be able to do at featherweight. Again, kind of a forgettable fight. At strawweight, Loma Lubunmi defeated Bruna Brazil via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. I was 30-27, but third round could have gone to Brazil, I suppose. Brazil just let Loma fight her fight. A lot of stuff at distance, just better kicks and combination work from Loma, some better clinch fighting. Not a whole lot to go on there. Somebody brought up an interesting point, though, I saw on Twitter. Because Loma and Stamp Fairtex were both very highly regarded Muay Thai fighters out of Thailand. In fact, Loma might have been the pound for pound number one. And their careers have taken pretty different paths. Stamp Fairtex went with one, and assuming one sticks around, which is itself a bit of a mystery as to how long that's going to go. But she's kind of become a star for them. She's put on some great fights, has worn gold. Again, kind of had some breakout performances. Loma went to the UFC, and she's had some ups and downs, and is kind of just, she's a little lost in the pack. Part of that is that woman is a much more natural atom weight. I said in my preview, I think if they had 105 pounds, this Loma Lookboonmee would be, I don't know if she'd be champion, but she'd be around the title pretty consistently. Um, she got a solid enough win here. Light heavyweights, Marcin Prachnio defeated Devin Clark via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. And after about 2 minutes into this fight, I sat there thinking to myself, past self, you picked Devin Clark to win a fight. Shame on you. You buffoon. You should have known better. Indeed, I should have. One of the few I got wrong, but I got that quite wrong. So, decent enough overall performance from Prachnio. Stuffed most of the takedowns. Kicks from long range. And, fairly standard, mediocre light heavyweight fight. Not even mediocre. Slightly lower mediocre light heavyweight fight. Welterweights, Max Griffin defeated Jeremiah Wells via split decision, again 29-28. I scored it for Wells, but I'm not up in arms over this one. The fight kind of sucked. I'm not going to sit here and declare that Carlston Harris might have ruined Jeremiah Wells, but something was different with that guy this time around. A lot more just like trying to explode rather than set things up. Not a lot of takedown attempts. He tried a ninja choke on Griffin at one point, which, credit for trying, but he slightly overcommitted, actually. Like, once Griffin had kind of sussed it out and was getting away from the danger, there was an opportunity for Wells to either change position or really break free, and he didn't quite capitalize on either. Griffin, after the fight, kind of getting pissed off at Sal D'Amato was funny. I think Sal D'Amato has been the judge for a few of Max Griffin's fights. And I think he scored 4 of them against him. So, there's several split decisions on Griffin's record, both wins and losses. And almost all of them, pertain to Sal D'Amato. I am not a big, proponent of Sal D'Amato continuing to judge fights. But it was funny to see Griffin, is this a personal thing or something? Dude, you fight in a way that is not very emphatic most of the time. And Wells did not look like he'd fully rebounded from that Carlston Harris loss. Light heavyweights, Bogdan Guskov defeated Zach Paunga via knockout punches, 3:38 of the first. Nice little finishing sequence from Guskov, but he's got a lot of work to do. This is one of those guys who kind of... you need to adjust how you fight regionally versus how you fight in the UFC. And I, have to give him a little bit of a pass for a slightly short notice fight against Volkan Oezdemir going sideways on him. He really will not find... I'm not going to say he's not going to find any success. But the style he displayed here, it's good enough to beat the Zach Paunga level. I don't know that it would beat even guys who are fringe top 15. But light heavyweight is also kind of a dumpster fire, so who knows? Featherweights, Hader Emil defeated Fernie Garcia via TKO punches, 2:12 of the second. Decent enough little fight here. Garcia moving up to featherweight after being at bantamweight and going 0-3. His woes continue. There was definitely a size difference. He tried to compensate for that with some speed, but just kind of got worn down. Emil just, again, kind of battered him and just slowly broke him down with just repeated thudding shots. They had a really fun grappling exchange in the near the end of the first round. Actually, each guy had the other's back for a bit. If you didn't watch this one, it's not the worst fight in the world. It might be the only. It's the only fight I'd really. I'll do that in a second. Decent enough little debut for Emil. And again, Garcia now 0-4. That's usually your walk-in papers, but he might get one more shot at it. And kicking everything off, Daniel Marcos and Orichi Long ended in a no contest due to an accidental groin kick in the second round. Marcos, I thought, won the first pretty handily, was battering Orichi Long's face. Then the second round comes along, and these two can't stop kicking each other in the groin. Marcos lands one that not too bad, but, not great. Orichi Long responds in... What was happening here was largely both guys kind of looking for either inside leg kicks or front kicks when they're a little too close to do so. And it results in, especially front kicks, like the groin is just in the trajectory of the kick a lot of the time. Even if you throw those real snappy, like, Taekwondo or Taekwondo does more round kicks. But if you throw those, like, if you've ever seen, like, more traditional karate guys, or any traditional martial art, they have that real, like, bring the kick up chambered and then snap it out, and even that style. Like, if you get a little too close, it'll mess with that. So that kind of happened back and forth, and the referee then told both of them, like, all right, we're done with this. Watch yourselves. And normally that might mean that on the next kick there's a point deduction. Under different circumstances, this might have gone differently, but Orichi Long is coming forward. Marcos goes to throw a front kick, and Orichi Long, for reasons known only to him and the Almighty, jumps up in the air. And this puts his groin in the path of the kick when this was not Marcos being even remotely irresponsible with his weaponry. This is the big thing about, like, you're in charge of your weapons. So if you throw a kick and it's not unreasonable that, it might foul the guy, like, that's on you. The other guy jumping up in the air and then that changing the entire trajectory of things, like, I can't get mad at Daniel Marcos for this one. I mean, the greatest low blow of all time came to us courtesy of, what was it? Was it KSW last year? Guy, fighter A, swings a right hand aimed, like, at the chest in the solar plex area. His opponent jumps up and tries a flying knee, and that punch that was aimed perfectly legally at the chest hits him in the groin and just, like, doubles him over. Oh, it's hilarious. It was either KSW or Octagon last year, and I'm inclined to think KSW because Octagon doesn't usually do the, like, body painted on sponsors, and I think KSW still does. No shade on that, just an observation if you're trying to tell which Polish MMA promotion you're looking at. This one, Orichi Long, again, I can't throw shade at that guy either. Like, getting kicked in the groin sucks. If your body weight is coming down as that's coming up too, like, that's just, ugh. That's almost worst case scenario. And he took the full 5, and at the end of that, just couldn't continue. And he was losing this fight, I won't say horribly, but handily, and it was, again, starting to go south in a hurry. So really unfortunate, but and just one of those things, man. Like, the weapons these two were choosing, given some of the distance considerations, made the first low blow, give or take, inevitable. Might have been an eye poke involved as well. Like, just not a great showing from both guys in terms of following the rules. So that was a no contest again, 3:28 of the second. Unfortunate for Marcos. He was winning that. And then, don't know why Orichi Long jumped. I really don't. Like, that's not normally what you do. He wasn't throwing an offensive technique, it looked like. Did he think a calf kick was coming or something? I guess I don't know. I don't know why he did that. But he did, and it made that into a low blow instead of a legal kick. And I don't know. For the record, that's not me saying in any way, shape, form, or fashion he was looking for a way out. It was just an odd decision that he made. So that was it. All 14 fights. You might have noticed I did not say there was a fight of the night. There was no fight of the night bonus awarded. I might have given it. It was shorter, but I might have given that to Emil and Garcia, personally. I don't know. I didn't hate Rodriguez and Tavares either. Instead, whenever they don't award fight of the night, we tend to get 4 performance bonuses, as we did here: Dan Ige, Adolfo Vieira, Carlos Prates, and Bogdan Gushkov. So pretty much, if you got a finish and you weren't Hader Emil, you got a bonus. Yeah, finishes were something of a premium, and that prelim card ran. One, it ran long because you had a bunch of fights. Then you had, man, that first fight was extended by like 7 minutes due to fouls. Because it again took the full 5 before Richie Long couldn't continue. That's why the rule's there. I'm not, again, no shade. Just a notation that they were behind pretty early, and I don't think they ever really got back out in front of it, time-wise. But if you want my full report, it's in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Give it a read. Always appreciate whenever you guys are able to do that, so thank you very, very much. Onward. So, there we go. Sorry. This coming Saturday, I mentioned already, UFC 298. First pay-per-view of 2024. And we are looking at a fight I'm very excited for. The main event is... Okay, just for the record. This is a solid pay-per-view card, by the way. What do I think is weak here? I mean, there's a few... Like, I don't care much about Jeff Neal and Ian Machado Gary. And I know I'm in the minority here. I just don't care about Henry Cejudo. But other people do, so objectively, we got a pretty solid pay-per-view card here. This event's lost a couple of fights. What have we lost? For a while, we were supposed to get Anthony Hernandez and Ikram Aliskerov. I don't know how he prefers, so I'm going with Aliskerov, and then I'll fix that. That got changed. We lost, I think, Trishan Gore and AJ Dobson, which, you may not think is much of a loss, but is actually a loss to the card. See, we lost Vinya Nakamura and Brady Heastand, Tatiana Suarez and Amanda Lemos. Lemos still on the card. But Suarez, unfortunate that woman, she's so good. That woman should have worn gold by now, but health issues, man. Tai Tuivasa and Marcin Tybura got rescheduled. Nothing of value was lost there. And we lost Danny Barlow and Yusaku Kinoshita. I think that would be Kinoshita. Sorry, just listening to a bunch of other people do some Japanese names that have that kind of ending to them, and most of those are like, American or European guys pronouncing it the way that it would be pronounced under English language or English adjacent languages, and I'm pretty sure that's not, it's not like Yamashita, it's Yamashita. But again, I might be mistaken. My knowledge of Japanese comes from little bit of some older Japanese MMA promotions, a little bit of anime, and Japanese professional wrestling. So I could be way off base there. Pretty sure I'm right. I'm pretty sure that would be Kinoshita as opposed to Kinoshita. So Anyway, that fell apart. I think those might have been Road to UFC things. I don't know. One of them, I think Kenoshita came from that previously, but anyway, point being, a few setbacks here and there. But, such is life with these cards. Currently scheduled for, what do we got, 7, 8, 9, only 11 fights on the, thank you. If I'm counting correctly, that's only 11. Anyway, main event. Best fight in the sport, I think. For the featherweight title, longtime champion. I can say long time at this point, right? When did I get? He won the belt in 2019, December of 19. So a little over 4 years. Long time at 4 years might be a bit of a stretch, but especially at featherweight, because we've had some long reigns at featherweight. And how long is? I should have a specific number here. Do we have number of days as champion? No? Alright, well, leave that. I could look it up, but it's not worth it. Okay, so, featherweight champion, Volkanovski, going for his, what is this, fourth? Hang on, so, Max, Ortega, Zombie, Max, so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This would be his sixth title defense at 145. Volkanovski has never lost in this weight class, which is kind of remarkable. His only career losses, his first one ever was up at welterweight, and then he has 2 losses at lightweight, both to Islam Makhachev. He's coming off the Makhachev loss where he took a very inadvisable fight. Both Volkanovski and Eugene Berriman have talked a little bit about this in the build-up to this one. Volk mentioning that he was being pretty undisciplined, drinking a bit too much, and that's not normally a thing that he does, but he did here. I think he said he drank a little, like some every day for a few weeks, and again, that's very undisciplined. And then Eugene Berriman kind of coming out and saying, yeah, he's not the only coach for Volkanovski, but him coming out and saying, yeah, I was never really in favor of that. You took the fight that first time with a full camp, and sure, it was competitive, but under mostly ideal circumstances, you couldn't get the job done. Fighting that guy on 10 days' notice is just a recipe for disaster, and Eugene Berriman, not a dumb man. Turned out to be very correct there, but back at featherweight, again, had enough time off, we're 4 months, give or take, off. That's, that's an okay time to recover from your first knockout loss since 2013. On the other side, we've got Ilia Topuria, who is undefeated, 14-0, and has been just beasting through the UFC. I don't just mean stopping everybody. He's got a couple of decisions. His UFC debut went the distance. He's got one. Yeah, that fight with Jai Herbert he took on short notice up at lightweight. Had a really bad first round. Rallied and knocked him out in the second. Gutsy performance there. In his last 2 fights, he put a beating on Bryce Mitchell and then completely shut down Josh Emmett for 5 rounds. That is not easy to do. And he's younger. So Volkanovski has hit the magic number. The magic number, for those of you who do not know, is 35. I've talked about this before. There's only been one fighter in UFC history that has won a title fight. I think the caveat there is undisputed. Have to double check on the interim side. But only one fighter has won a fight, a UFC title fight, above the age of 35 and over in UFC history. Tyron Woodley did it twice. And frankly, I don't want to say those were aberrations, but I've talked about this before. One of those was over Old Man Maya, who was like 40. And then Darren Till, who really shouldn't have been in the cage with him, was pushed way too fast. And he got that title shot coming off of a fight I and a number of other people thought he lost. So the UFC just really wanted another UK star, and they thought they had one in Till, and they kind of ruined him. But the point there being, if you go, 155 and lower, nobody's done it. So Volkanovski, now 35, he's hit that number, and to Volkanovski's credit, he released a hilarious little 2-minute video on YouTube making fun of him being too old. Look it up if you haven't had the chance to. It's funny. I got a few laughs out of it. But that's a big deal. I mean, the numbers don't lie in that respect. Now, somebody at some point is going to break that, is going to, change the statistic there a little bit. It's inevitable. You do anything enough, every outcome becomes an eventuality, which is kind of an extension of Murphy's Law, I suppose. But it's a rough one. This is a tough fight. Topuria, again, young. I mean, he's only 27. Young guy, power puncher, pretty good striking defense. His shoulder rolling against Josh Emmett was excellent. Can wrestle. We've seen him fight 5 rounds. Even if Topuria comes up short here, I expect him to be in the title picture again at some point, probably wearing gold. Right now, not as sure. Eventually, I would bet on this guy wearing gold at some point. Not as sure right now. Few things here. Both guys will do some stance switching. Volk's a little bit better at that. Volkanovski has really refined his game as of late. He does a lot of trickery. He does a lot of setups, a lot of hand fighting. He's got a good chin. The knockout loss to Makhachev notwithstanding. I'm very much looking forward to this one. I think the battle, a couple of things are really interesting to me about this one. Some of this is on the physical side. Topuria will be a little bit taller. He's 5'8", and he's got a 69-inch reach, whereas Volkanovski is 5'6", but has a 71.5-inch reach. So how we navigate that space will be a little bit interesting. Volkanovski's jab is kind of a big thing for him. Even if he doesn't land it, he uses it to hand fight. His leg kicks, again, disruptors, builders, mixing up striking with takedowns. The real estate is not as interesting to me here because if Topuria is going backwards the whole time, I think that's a bad look for him. I think it will indicate bad things. But other times, okay, whoever's going forward is winning. This is not that simple. Volkanovski, quite capable of fighting off the back foot if necessary. And again, this is a really good fight. The temptation to just stick with the age line is very real here for me. But I do think I'm gonna lean towards Volkanovski here just a bit. Now, just a bit, and I am not at all gonna be shocked if Ilia Topuria wins anyway, actually. He could get a stoppage. He's heavy-handed enough. He could get a submission. Volk's never been submitted. But, and you might be saying to yourself, or to me, if Brian Ortega couldn't do it with that mounted guillotine choke, then how in the world is Ilia Topuria going to pull it off? I didn't say it was the most likely. I said it wouldn't surprise me because Ilia Topuria he's a pretty darn good grappler. Ultimately, I think Volk is a little bit too refined and a little bit too well-rounded. He can play up and down, good about mixing things up, good about landing, Toporia's defensing, and while it was good against Josh Emmett is a very predictable striker. So Topuria could build very solid defensive patterns that Josh Emmett was unlikely to ever really punish. Volkanovski's a much more varied striker. His patterns are much more sophisticated, not nearly as easy to decipher. So I'm going with Volkanovski. I think he's going to buck the trend of 35 and older, but if he doesn't, it wouldn't surprise me. This is a great fight. It's a great main event. I am psyched for this one. Genuinely can't wait. Please don't let anything happen to this fight. It's so good. That's my only fear is that something happens during the week of. But other than that, can't wait for it. Great fight. Co-main event. Sir Robert of Knuckles, Robert Whittaker, will be taking on Paulo Costa. Both men have agreed to it this time. The UFC isn't just out here spouting nonsense. Whittaker, such a shame he doesn't have an official title defense on his record. His only losses at middleweight ever are to Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis. So, former champion, current champion. I'm not prepared to write him off just yet. I know he's getting up there a little bit. He's only 33, but for the record, 31 total fights. Been with the UFC since 2012. So, was that December of 12? So, 11 years coming up on 12. That's a long career, and he's fought that guy has fought a lot of people. A lot of very, very good people. I mean, if we want to limit this to his middleweight run, it goes as follows. Clint Hester, Brad Tavares, Uriah Hall, Rafael Natal, Derek Brunson, Jacare Souza, Yoel Romero again, and good grief, that second one is a war. If you haven't seen it, go watch that fight. Israel Adesanya, Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, Kelvin Gastelum, Adesanya again, Marvin Vettori, and DDP. And find me the soft fight there. The closest you get is Clint Hester, and Hester was favored to win that, if memory serves. He just didn't pan out. After that, again, there's not a soft fight there by any stretch of the imagination, anywhere along that list. So, the miles do add up at some point. On the other hand, we have Paulo Costa, he of the secret juice, who has not fought since August of 2022, when he beat Luke Rockhold via unanimous decision. Because Rockhold then kind of retired from MMA after that. It was a great fight. It was your fight of the night for UFC 278, but he's been out for a while. He's been off for a while, and I'm not going to be shocked if Paulo Costa pulls this off, because much as I respect Robert Whittaker, again, that dude's been in some wars, and he has fought the best for a long time, and I respect the heck out of him for it. I have nothing but admiration for his career. I'm on record for that multiple times. But that bill does come due. And if this is the time when that starts happening, I'm not going to be too surprised. That said, I am picking Whittaker because I don't pick against him very often. And I expect he will be too technical for Paulo Costa. I expect he will be a little too quick. He moves very well. If he's kind of ironed out some of the habits that other guys have been able to pick up on, because I mentioned here for a long time, a lot of tape on that man. A lot of tape on on Robert Whittaker. So people have started picking up on some of his habits. But if he's ironed out a few of those, I expect he will give Costa problems. His jab will give him problems. He's a pretty good blitzer. Whittaker's been adding some wrestling into his repertoire. Whittaker's not the tallest middleweight, but he's pretty darn strong. So, going with Whittaker, solid co-main event overall. And let's see, next up, welterweights, Jeff Neal and Ian Machado Gary. This is the fight I am the least interested in on this card, main card. Neal, been out for a little. Neal looked pretty darn good for a long time. Then he lost a 5-round fight to Stephen Thompson. That hurt. Then he followed that up by losing to Neil Magny, a fight that when I say he probably should have won, I don't mean that he should have won on the scorecards. I mean, he really, he demonstrated to be better than Magny most places and couldn't do it that night. Beat Santiago Ponzinibbio, knocked out Vicente Luque, but and then he gave Shavkat Rakhmonov some problems before getting tapped out eventually. Neal's a pretty stern test for old Gary here. Gary's undefeated, 13-0. Coming off a good enough win over Neil Magny. I've picked against Gary a lot, and I keep feeling stupid afterwards. Here's the thing about this one. The best version of Jeff Neal should beat Ian Machado Gary. I feel pretty confident saying that. The problem with Jeff Neal is that he's not been consistently able to bring his best version or something closely approximating it to bear in the fight. I'm going to feel like an idiot if the first time I pick Gary to win, he loses because he's taking a step up against a very prepared, very dangerous opponent. But I'm going to go with Gary. I think the UFC like him a lot. And despite that guy received a mountain of backlash over the last little bit. Some of it deserved. Some of it is stupid. Some of it, the whole, oh, wait a minute, is your wife sleeping with other men? Okay, I don't care. Stop with this. That's stupid, CW drama BS that is utterly uninteresting. Him lashing out at people for stepping out of fights and then pulling out of his, and then, there's some hypocrisy going on there that I have no problem with other people kind of roasting him over. So, again, some of the stuff that I don't care and I think is stupid. Some of it, I mentioned this before, man. You put out a lot of noise is going to come back at you. And that, you better be ready for it, and I don't know that Gary was. So we'll see if he's able to in this case. I'm going to pick him. Might feel very, very dumb come fight night, but I think he's figured out some of the issues that were bothering him earlier, and Jeff Neal's just been a bit too inconsistent for me to feel very confident picking here. All right, that brings us to bantamweight and Henry Cejudo versus Merab Dvalishvili. Cejudo did some coaching shakeup for this, including for this camp at least not being with Eric Albarracin. Cejudo's been out of action for a bit. He last lost a split decision to Aljamain Sterling. I didn't get this being split, by the way. For the bantamweight title after a 3-year retirement. He was supposed to fight Marlon Vera last year, and he dodged a bullet there when he injured his shoulder, because I think Vera would have put it on him. This is a big fight for him. He's trying to get back to the title picture. A win over Merab would do that, in fairness. But Cejudo is 37. He's almost... Okay, he just turned 37. Okay. And that's rough. And he's got skills, but I don't know. He looked rusty, and now his body's starting to break down a little bit. I mean, the dude's been wrestling forever. And then your body does just break down. Dwalis really has not lost since April of 2018. So he's on a what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 9-fight winning streak. Only one finish in there, and he probably should have lost that fight to Marlon Moraes. That could have been stopped in the favor of Moraes. Coming off a win over Piotr Jan that was deeply uninspired. Coming off prior to that, he beat Jose Aldo in a deeply uninspired performance. Here's the thing. I don't think Dvalishvili is capable of out-wrestling Henry Cejudo in pure wrestling. That would be very surprising to me. But we've also seen what Merab does when he can't just out-wrestle you. He will just clinch. He will just move forward. He will just fight at a pace that you can't match. And I do have some questions about Cejudo's gas tank at this point. I have questions about anyone's gas tank relative to Merab's. That dude's motor is insane. I'm not going to be, once again, I'm not going to be surprised if Henry Cejudo wins. I am long since past being surprised by that man's success. But at his age, with his mileage, against a guy that, I mean, in fairness to the other point, like, I don't know that Cejudo will be able to consistently out-wrestle Merab. I expect him to be the better technical wrestler, but technical wrestling and MMA wrestling are not the same things. So I expect him to be a little bit better there, but I don't know that that's going to be something he can bring to bear continuously enough to slow down and stifle Merab's general pressure and pace game. So I'm going with Merab here. It occurs to me I have not looked up the odds on any of these, so for the sake of my curiosity, let's see how much I might be picking against the curve here. I'm actually picking the favorites at the moment. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, Volkanovski slight favorite, very slight. Whitaker a decent favorite over Costa. Merab decent-ish, a little less than 2-1 over Cejudo. Gary's a favorite over Neal. Yeah, so okay, brave picks for me coming out at the moment. Sorry. Sarcasm aside. Yeah, going with Merab there for the aforementioned reasons. The odds do not affect my pick. I bring them up as a talking point more than anything else. And kicking off the main card, we have Anthony Hernandez and Roman Kopylov. Another very good fight. Hernandez, he's on a good winning streak. In order, Rodolfo Vieira, who he caught with that nasty seated arm triangle, Josh Fremd, Marc-Andre Barrio, and Edmund Shabazian. The Shabazian win, I do not put a tremendous amount of weight behind because Shabazian's kind of washed out at this point. Him being able to hang on against Vieira and eventually out-grapple him was big. The Barrio win was kind of what everyone expected out of that fight. Hernandez is good. Hernandez is very good. He is your favorite, and I understand why. But if you'll indulge me for just a moment. Roman Kopylov is a better striker. Kopylov is on a 4-fight winning streak. All of them finishes. Pretty violently, too. I think the other thing about... hang on. Hernandez's last fight was... Yeah, May of last year. You have anything fall out? Yeah. Okay, so Kopylov's taken this on somewhat short notice. Might be affecting things. This was supposed to be, I mentioned it already, a little bit earlier, I mentioned it, I think. Hernandez against Ikram Aliskerov. This would have been a really good fight. Hernandez was supposed to fight Chris Curtis last year. Curtis got injured. Kopylov stepped in. Hernandez got injured. Then Fremd fought Kopylov, and Kopylov violently knocked him out. The short notice gives me a little bit more pause here. But it's not that short. Again, here we go. I'm going to buck the odds a little bit. I'm going with Kopylov. Might be very wrong. Hernandez is very good, so I don't fault anyone picking him. His success in this fight will not shock me, but the last couple of fights, Kopylov really seems to have put it together. He really seems to be figuring things out. He's got good striking. He's been able to avoid a lot of clinches. This is a big test for him. Hernandez is a decent step up in competition from the guys he's been fighting. But the other side of that is, on short notice, Hernandez preparing for Aliskerov. Kopylov is not Ikram Aliskerov. There's some differences there. So I'm going with Kopylov. But that's a really good fight. That's a really good pay-per-view card. Just really solid. All right, on the prelims, Amanda Lemos, fresh off of getting wiped out basically by Zhang Weili, will be taking on Mackenzie Dern, who is fresh off of a very disappointing fight against Jessica Andrade. The UFC really would like to get Dern into a title fight, and she just keeps stumbling at the finish line here. The time she gets to a fight that would get her to a title fight, she stumbles. Dern looked so bad in her last fight, man. She's been consistently inconsistent. Because against Angela Hill, she looked really good for 5 rounds. She even had moments in that Yan Xiaonan fight that you could argue should have been a draw. I think that's how I scored it. And then just everything falls apart against Andrade. Whereas Lemos kind of sort of gets into a title fight because there's no one else left after she beats Michelle Waterson and then Marina Rodriguez. But again, she had nothing for Zhang Weili. That fight could have been stopped at a few different points. Just nothing. I just don't know that I can pick Dern at this point. I just don't know that I can do that. She's just so all over the place. The odds on this one are... Hang on. Dern might be really all over the place, but is Lemos really the kind of fighter that can punish that? This is super close. All right. This might be the last time I pick Mackenzie Dern, but I'm going to pick her. And if she loses badly again, I am probably done picking her to win fights. Because she regressed so much her last time out. I mean, it was baffling, really. Just baffling. All right, heavyweights. Justin Tafa and Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Justin Tafa knocked out Austin Lane his last time out. He had a little bit of a rough start to the UFC, but hasn't lost since 21. May of 21, actually. And De Lima, I think, didn't he get stopped by Derek Lewis last time? Yeah, it was almost embarrassing. Dude, this is like, again, lower level heavyweights. De Lima is the better all-around fighter, but he's been chinny. And again, Tough has been, leg kicked and out wrestled before. This basically feels like a coin flip to me. How old is DeLima? Is he shot? He's 38. Jeez, he's pretty much my age. He looked pretty good beating Arlovsky and Waldo Cortez Acosta. He did not look good against Blagoy Ivanov, though. I don't know, man. This is a step up for Tafa. Like, he debuted and had some problems, and then they kind of reset him. Then, oh yeah, he missed weight at heavyweight. First guy ever to do that. Weighed 267. Um, Here's the other thing about Tafa. He's junior enough in his career. He still only has like 11 fights. There's still a lot of room for growth that I don't think is there for DeLima, who is not only older but has 31 fights. Yeah, let me go with Tafa. The age difference is kind of a factor here. 8 years is non-trivial. Now, the difference between 30 and 38 is... I'm not saying it's not... I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but... It's not as stark as if we go, like... 28 to 36. Like that actually feels like a much steeper difference, but... I'm going with Tafa. I think he'll have, smoothed out some things and leveled up his skills enough to deal with DeLima, but could be very wrong there. Could be very wrong. At bantamweights, Rinya Nakamura and Carlos Vera. Let's see, Nakamura, undefeated, 2 wins in the UFC over Toshiomi Kazama, or Kazama, I think it's Kazama for him, and Fernie Garcia. So not a shabby start. He looked pretty good in the Road to UFC tournament that he won. Now we're moving him along a little bit, and he's again Vera, who has he fought in the UFC before? He's from Ecuador, 11-3. This is his UFC debut. He lost on that silly season of The Ultimate Fighter, where it was guys who had washed out of the UFC and guys trying to get there, and that went bad for everyone trying to get there. He's had a couple of canceled fights. I think both of these are in the UFC. Marcos would have been. Vilson, excuse me, Indragoni? Where's this guy from? Albania? I have no idea how that would be pronounced then, so I am not going to try. I might say something really silly. I think this is Nakamura. Nakamura's looked pretty solid in general, and I haven't seen enough of Vera to have a really solid opinion. I think they're still kind of soft pedaling might be the wrong phrase, but they're very aware of, Nakamura is a developing fighter rather than a finished product at the moment, and they treat that with, if they like you, they treat that with respect. Nakamura, geez, he's a giant favorite. I don't know that I like him like minus 1200 much, but I do like him to win here. So I'll go with Nakamura. And you might be asking for trouble with, again, developing fighters. Not sure I'd go 10-1 favorite on anybody under these circumstances. See, then we have a light heavyweight fight. We have Zhang Mingyang and Brenson Ribeiro. I'm going to assume that's Ribeiro. Yeah, he's Brazilian. So Zhang, 16-6, 6'2". That's actually on the slightly smaller end for light heavyweight. This is his UFC debut. He'd been scheduled for that a couple of times, actually, this year. Or last year and then this year. He was supposed to debut against Tyson Pedro. Yeah, he won a Road to UFC tournament, it looks like. Or won a fight and then fell out of it for injury, or I don't know. Again, was supposed to fight Tyson Pedro. Then got this fight. That fell through. They rebooked it for this one. So he's been out of action technically for a while. His last fight was June of 22. Yeesh. You missed a year and a half. That's nothing to sneeze at. By contrast, Hiberio, 15-5. I think also making his debut, right? Yeah, won a Contender Series fight his last time out. 3-fight winning streak overall. So, are they trying to help out the Contender Series guy, or are they trying to help out the Road to UFC guy? I don't know. I tend to think a little bit higher of the Road to UFC stuff than the Contender Series, as a general rule. With that in mind, yeah, let's go Zhang. Just a bit. I think it's probably another close one if you knew more about both guys, but I'm going with Zhang. And on the early prelims at welterweight, Josh Quinlan and Danny Barlow. Quinlan might be on the chopping block here. No, I'm confusing him. Sorry. He's 1-1 in the UFC. Yes. Had a pretty solid win in his debut over Jason Witt. Lost to Trey Waters after that. Had a fight with Angelosa fall through. Now he's got Barlow, who is 7-1. Jeez. Again, I don't know. I don't like guys getting into the UFC this early. I don't know how much good it does in the long term. Barlow coming in off a win on the Contender Series. Yeah, undefeated in MMA. Yes, I already said that. Hard to pick guys who are, again, this junior. Quinlan, the edge in UFC experience might be a big deal. The odds, though, are solidly enough with Barlow. There might have really been... Talk around Quinlan might have cooled a lot after his last fight. Well, once again, in the position of... They're trying to slightly help out the guy that's coming off the Contender Series. Let me go with Barlow here. I'm not really sold on that one. Again, guys that junior, guys that with that much room to grow, I never really feel confident with those picks. Speaking of picks like that, jeez, there's so many of these. We have another welterweight fight, Oban Elliott and Val Woodburn. Woodburn 7-1. I believe he lost his UFC debut. Oh yeah, Bo Nickel just iced him July of last year in 38 seconds. So I think Woodburn took that fight on somewhat short notice, because that would have been at middleweight. This is at welterweight, which I think is more natural for him. Elliott 9-2. Let's see. This is UFC debut. 5-fight overall winning streak. That's nothing to sneeze at. Anybody I know on here? No, doesn't look like it. Man, again, I don't have a good feel for Woodburn. Like, you come out there and you get iced by someone like Bo Nickel very quickly. And, there's not a lot there to pick out. Elliott is your favorite. Once again, we could be in a position where a guy coming off the Contender Series getting a guy who's in the UFC that they're not sure is really UFC caliber. Again, if you're doing the tea leaf reading kind of thing, that might make sense. I'll go with Elliott. But once again, I'm not confident in a bunch of these. Kicking everything off, we have women's flyweight action between Andrea Lee and Miranda Maverick. Lee has been not doing great lately. 2-6 in her last 8, in somewhat fairness to her. 3 of those are split decisions. 2 of them I thought she won. I thought she beat Macy Barber. I definitely thought she beat Lauren Murphy. And I could see the argument. I kind of thought she beat Joanne Calderwood too. The losses to the loss to Natalia Silva, Roxanne Modafferi, those were very legitimate. But um, she's she came into the UFC after a stint in Invicta and LFA where she looked pretty good, and she just never it never really brought everything to bear. Maverick has also had some setbacks. You know, she looked pretty good. I thought she beat Macy Barber. She definitely lost her in Blanchfield, though. Won a couple of fights, lost to Jasdavicius. That was pretty rough. Got a decent rebound win over Priscilla Cachoeira, but of course Priscilla Cachoeira should not be in the UFC or sanctioned by a legitimate, reputable athletic commission. But hey, that's just my opinion. This feels like a Maverick fight. You know, I I have a lot of respect for Lee as a fighter. She's shown some pretty good ability, but again, she's just struggled so much to really kind of harmonize everything. And Maverick might have started sorting herself out lately, so going with Maverick. And yeah, that's the card. So only 12 fights, and let's hope nothing happens to the main event because I really want to see Volkanovski and Taporia. Saturday, MMAZone411mania.com. You know the place. I will be covering this. They're in Anaheim for this event, so a real venue. Who'd have thought? And yeah, stop by, say hello. I always appreciate it. Okay, so that brings us to here's the only really like news thing that I think kind of took up some space in the MMA side of things that I want to talk about. Dana White got asked about the main event of UFC 300, and he kind of said it's been interesting, it's been tough. We still don't have one. John Jones, during an interview, then said he was offered a main event slot at UFC 300, and because of the timeline, we're like 9 weeks out, and between I'd say still recovering. It's clear that as a general rule, he's out of the woods for most of his rehab from his torn pec. But there's still like this kind of got brought up because a video clip of him went around like tackling a rugby player. I mean, there were pads involved. It was very safe. But a lot of people went, "Oh, this must mean he's 100%." Well, not necessarily. And there's a difference between being I'm good to start training again under some conditions and I'm ready to fight. So between the truncated timeline and everything else, he turned it down. Um, I don't know who's left, guys. Dana was public about like we're gonna try to do Connor in like the fall. Can I ask the question out loud? Like, what is the holdup with Connor? I'm not like, look, horrific injury that caused. Look, man, you break your leg, especially your tibia fibia in half like that. Like you break both of them. Okay, that's bad. We've seen that. It's real bad. If it's closer to his was close to the ankle. Like as terrible as it was for Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva and Corey Hall back in the day. As terrible as those were, and they were, those were higher up where it's just bone. And Weidman still had complications from that kind of stuff, and I'm sure Anderson Silva's recovery was no picnic. But if it's just the bone, barring complications, it's doable. The closer you get to, especially the ankle joint, which is a fairly complicated piece of biology there, the more like complicated it gets. And Connor broke his right by the ankle. So he had to get that fixed. He had complications. I don't begrudge him having to recover from that. I really don't. And then, shot the stupid movie, and now that the trailer's out and I have laughed heartily at it in ways it does not intend me to laugh at it. Um, I don't know what the holdup is. For last year, man, like, when did that season of The Ultimate Fighter air with him and Chandler? It was. Hang on. Sorry, the list of things with him, the controversies, are pretty darn long. Businesses, personal life, no, I don't care. No, I don't care. Okay. So The Ultimate Fighter Season 31. Okay, that was May through August of 2023. So they announced that, and the assumption is always the coaches will fight somewhere close to the end of that season, there, close to the finale, right? And it just never materialized. Or didn't they also say like it was gonna be even earlier? Didn't they mention that maybe it would happen in like July? So I remember there being a bit where Connor was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna fight," early in the year for 2023. And the USADA thing came up. And we're like, you got to be in the pool for 6 months, and we have to have 2 clean test results from you during that time period. And he just didn't enter the pool, and we're all checking the timeline on this, going, okay, so year started, so knock off June, knock off July, knock off August, and we're counting, right? And then the UFC and USADA get kind of pissy at each other, partially over stuff related to Connor and some public stuff that was said by all relevant parties. I talked about that in the past. Then the UFC's relationship with USADA ends January 1st, 2024. And we all kind of assume, okay, announcement imminent. And Connor released a video that was just weird, where he said, yeah, I'm Michael Chandler and me at International Fight Week at middleweight. And turns out, no. I think that would have been announced by now, right? Like that's kind of would have been done by this point, I think. Um, so there again, the UFC is still, and Dana White's indicating it'll be later. So I don't know what's up with Connor. At this point, though, I don't think it's unfair to conclude that USADA and their policies was not the only hurdle they were trying to clear. I don't know what these other ones are, but something. There is some kind of an impasse here. I don't know. Again, don't know what it is. Might be money. Might be who knows what. Probably money. But we still don't know what's up. So, again, it's getting dimmer and dimmer for like who's available for 300. At this point, look, I would not be mad if they said our main event is Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje. I wouldn't be mad at that. Dustin Poirier making his thoughts known. He actually favors Max in that fight. Dude, he's fought both of them twice, so I certainly respect his opinion on that. I mean, I don't think I agree with him, but he fought Max in Max's UFC debut on short notice, and then they fought 5 rounds for the interim belt a couple of years ago. And then, of course, he's fought Gaethje twice, stopped him in the 4th round of their first fight, and then got head kicked in the second round of their second one. The man has first-hand experience with both guys, so I take his opinion seriously on that. But at this point, like that might be your main event. And here's the problem, man. Like if you had just come out and said that's your main event, everyone would have been fine. We would have been hyped. Because, dude, it's Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje. Like violence, action, blood. You can't ask for anything more than that. Um, but you've now not listed that, and you spent so much time saying that UFC 300 is going to be an all-time great card, and you're not going to believe it, and we're kicking everything off. I think they said, like, we're kicking the first fight of the night, not pay-per-view card, but, like, of the night would be Cody Garbrandt and Davison Figueiredo. Just, I get the hot opener, but, dude, especially if this is in Vegas, like, those guys are going to be fighting in front of nobody because Vegas crowd, like, the prelims of a UFC event in Las Vegas look more like a bomb scare than a major sporting event. Main card rolls around, especially like the back half of it. The place is pretty well packed and rocking, but those first couple of fights, man, no. That's where the woos are the loudest, because like there's just drunk idiots far enough apart that somebody does the woo thing, and it doesn't catch on, but it's very loud because the place is not very full. Um, but they're running out of time to figure that out, man. They really are. So we'll keep an eye on it as we have been. Okay. I think that's it for stuff I have listed. Again, it was kind of a light news week from what I recall, and what I could double check. Yeah, let's check Twitter one more time for MMA related stuff. And sorry, I may have bumped my mic there. If there's nothing crazy that's happened, we will do plugs and get out of here. Nope, nothing new. So plugs. Last week, myself and Mark Radulich got together and we reviewed Argyle. We were not kind. It was not a good movie. Unfortunately, had some high hopes for that. You can listen to that on Damn You Hollywood in the archives. This week, in fact, Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be reviewing Lisa Frankenstein, which, if you were not aware exists, I don't blame you. Oh, we're doing Madam. February sucks, man. On the movie front, February sucks. Argyle was kind of a bust. And then there's Lisa Frankenstein, which we're doing kind of just to do something. The week after that is Madam Web, which... Ay, 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 ay. Not looking forward to. Alright, but... You listen to our review of Lisa Frankenstein. I'll be seeing it. I don't have thoughts on the movie yet. I comment on its like marketing, not on the film. All right, we'll see it tomorrow. Then what do we got? Yeah. If MLW has something that they're going to be releasing, I will be covering it because I do. WWE SmackDown coming your way on Friday, and then of course the UFC 298 on Saturday. So looking forward to all of that. We will be back here next week. We will review UFC 298 and we will preview UFC on ESPN Plus 95. They are in Mexico City for the first time in first pre-COVID, man. The last time they fought, oh, I remember this, was the first fight between Jeremy Stevens and Yair Rodriguez when when Stevens took a finger to the eye in like a minute, and then it spasmed shut and he couldn't continue, and they pelted everything with garbage, and Brendan Fitzgerald got under the announce table to avoid the flying detritus. Been a while. How does that card look? And as a fight night, but if they have to sell tickets, they put some effort in. Rematch between Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval. There can be only one Brandon. That's not a bad fight. We got a rematch between Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. Those two fought. again, sometime back and had the shoulder injury to Ortega that messed things up. What else do we have here? I mean, there's a lot of like Mexicans or first generation American immigrants, or first generation Americans or sons of immigrants. Daniel Zellhuber, Raul Rosas Jr. against Ricky Tercios. You are asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble with that fight. Yasmin Jauregui, who had some hype and then got starched by Denise Gomes. Manuel Torres. Hani Barcelos is usually good for a fight. On the prelims. There's 4 flyweight fights on the prelims. One in the main event, too. Jesus Santos Aguilar and Mateus Mendonça. Edgar Chairez and Daniel Lacerda. You're putting the Brazilians against the Mexicans in Mexico. Claudio Puelles and Faris Ziam. That's not terrible. Curious about Muhammad Naimov. He's kicking everything off, but he's 2-0 in the UFC. Had a good win over Nathaniel Wood, actually. Kind of curious that he's just curtain jerking the whole thing. There's several of these fights I would assume he would be higher on the card then, but he's fighting Eric Silva, so, there's not a specific rooting interest for a partisan crowd. Not even angry at partisan crowds, just noting. All right, full preview next week. Long and the short of that one. Yeah. So, thank you all again very, very much. Stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.